Hello, Booktubians. Today I'm going to be talking about Dresden again, and because I can't stop talking about Dresden, frankly speaking, so get used to that. I'm going to be talking about the Eras of Dresden, and I'm going to be very purposefully pedantic about where I like to draw the lines of eras. And by that I mean, usually people just like to do, oh, from this book to this book, and it'll be like 10 books in between, which is fair. As I said, I like talking about Dresden, and I do think the series has a few pivotal changes, even across like 2 to 3 books that I think evolutions happen for the series, and I'm just going to highlight what I think are those, and then kind of highlight at the end the broad areas where the series takes a massive turn for the status quo. So starting off is going to be right off book 3. 1 through 3, rather, that's a tongue twister, I think is like Baby Dresden. It's like, it's very, very self-contained adventure stories. Now, this is going to be mild spoilers, because I'm kind of talking about the nature of the plot and stuff, so be warned. I'm not going to drop massive, Luke, I am your father kind of spoilers. Spoiler. But I'm going to be dropping sort of where the plot kind of ebbs and flows and shifts. So if you don't want to know that, be warned. But this is the first book that kind of, when it ends with that showcases sort of a larger world than perhaps Stormfront and Full Moon displayed. There's things in this book, specifically with a event that the characters go to, that are still that have mysteries that are still unsolved even to this day. 17 books into the series, there are characters that are mentioned here and things that are mentioned here that are unsolved. So I think this is the first book where the ending also has lasting consequences for the entire series, which is not a thing that Stormfront and Full Moon really capitalize on, at least not in their own books. So things that happen in those first 2 books might be kind of relevant later on, like a little bit, like characters come back, but you don't get to see that until much later in the series. This is the first book in the series where something happens and the consequences are right off the bat, and it leads into the next book. And I think that really sets off that pattern. I'm basically choosing mini eras as anything that starts a pattern that is reoccurring. And that's what I kind of identify as even if it's a small one, an evolution in the series. And I will highlight that. And this is a small evolution in the series, because it goes from your standalone sort of noir fantasy books in Chicago to something greater than just that. So that is Grave Peril. Next up is Death Masks. In my top 5 book, I explained that this book is very close to me because, and very on my list, despite being in the earlier formative books for the series, and it's because it's the first book in my mind that truly places Dresden in almost like a multi-front war, and not that he's in a war, but I mean that on like a plot thing, because in here there's a singular plot that he's trying to deal with. Yeah, there's subplots. I mean, all of them have subplots. I'm not saying that they are only one threat the entire time. There's other things, but this one almost has like 2 main plots. There is, again, mild spoilers, there's like a duel that he has to deal with. There is a greater mystery around murders that have been happening, as there's always, it's a mystery at the end of the day as well. And there's other things, other parts of his life that are coming back from the past. There's things that he has to look forward for the future. And this is where really it starts happening. I think every book after this now, he has to deal with everything all at once. Whereas I think you can read Stormfront, Full Moon, and even Grave Peril, and it's just linear building off of one after other. There's a little bit of past stuff in Summer Night, I will admit, but I think this one really kind of starts that trend where every book you're just like, dude, you gotta like take some things off your itinerary because it is a little too packed. So there's that. And then I would say Deadbeat. There is I would say a pretty substantial status quo change here. This is the first book where I think we really get a breakdown on a character level, how someone that doesn't know the supernatural exists has to come to terms with the supernatural. I'm not including Murphy in that because I think she's always known something was a little up, and I think when her realization happens, it happens over the course of multiple books because Dresden kind of eases her in, as because I think from a narrative, like from a meta perspective, that's I think how Butcher is able to also ease the the readers in. It is a first person perspective from someone that belongs in the world, so a lot of times the exposition dump might be a little much. I don't think it's much, but I'm saying I think that's also one of the many I guess services that Murphy offers as a character. Plus, she's a great character. But I think it's nice to have someone that's learning at the same pace as the readers. Plus, a year takes place between every one of these books. So this is the first book where we get someone that doesn't have a year. He has literally days to just like get with the system or die, basically. It's a dangerous world out there, and I love the banner between Dresden and this character, because I think it really highlights some of Butcher's greatest traits as a world builder, which is the believability of such a magical realm. He does the opposite that J.K. Rowling does for her world building, where she goes above and beyond to hide it from the real world, so much so that where Hogwarts is almost irrelevant. It could just be anywhere. But Butcher really likes to ground his stuff, much like honestly Percy Jackson. He likes to ground his stuff into no. This thing is in Chicago. This thing is on this street in Chicago. This pub is on this, like he really knows and wants to say like, no, these things exist. Like they could exist right now, and you could not disprove or prove it unless you are lucky or unlucky, you could even say. And that's what this book does. And I think that's a huge plus for me. And also a huge change, because I don't think we get that very often in the series. The next thing that this book also changes is a huge change in station for what Dresden is. For the first 6 books, Dresden is a bit of a nobody when it comes to the grander scheme of things. He earns, and rightfully so, earns a point of status that is satisfying. It is subversive almost. Like I mean, you could say that you saw it coming, I guess, like with what you have read before. I wouldn't say I didn't see it coming, but I will say that when it happened, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm so excited to see where this will go. And it leads into the next book, Proven Guilty, which immediately utilizes that change. And so does every book after that. So I still consider it a pretty big status quo and an evolution in the series. And like a miniature evolution to the character and the world, and how the plots go moving forward. So there's that. And again, every time I put this book on anything, it's like obvious that it's going to be here, because it is changes. It's in the name. It's a status quo changer. I've said it multiple times. It's hard to not put this again and again on everything. If not for the quality, then just for the massive change that happens in this book. But just to highlight a few of the things, I would say it's a pretty big world change that happens in this in terms of the status quo. It is a massive character change, much like the station that he achieves in this book. The stuff that he takes on in this, in terms of responsibility, is massive. And it is kind of, honestly, it is a testament to patience as a writer on Butcher's end to be able to build what he does here for 11 books, for it to mean so much in this book. And then same thing with Deadbeat. What he builds up for 6 books before Deadbeat, and then proceeds to build, give you that payoff. I think that's what makes it such a big thing. And I think every reader probably has a moment of like, oh, like as soon as Dresden considers taking this decision or making this decision, it is a massive, oh my god, okay, maybe this is a little too far. Maybe you need to like bring it back. And I love when a writer is able to invoke that in anything. So there's that massive change. And then I think another great example is, or not example, I'll be vague with this one because it is a hard spoiler, but there's consequences that are irrevocable. Irrevocable? You can't take it back. You can't, no takesy backsies. Point is. And they are some hard-hitting consequences. And I think that is also what makes and breaks a status quo changing book in a large series like this, and this book does it well. And then finally, again, no surprise, everyone saw it coming, Battleground. It's the latest book in the franchise right now, and it is, it is a massive change. I think this book, I said it before, I think, but This book changes a lot, but it's the first time it changes. This thing does it, like, it triples it down. There is, again, everything I said about this, just double down, triple down on it. Massive consequences, massive, like, what is going to happen in the next book? I have no idea. How are people going to react to this change that happened in the world, to the characters, to the plot? I think I wanted to make a very specific point that between this book, or before this book and after this book, I would say are the massive plot evolutions. Before this book, it is very much monster of the week, really monster of the year. After this book, I feel like every book has a status quo change. And the reason I'm not putting them here, even though they have a status quo, is because it becomes sort of the norm to have a status quo book change after this book. From Ghost Story to Cold Days to Skin Game to then Peace Talks and then this. Every book changes something massively, but I think this book and this book are the milestones where they start doing that. Much like how Death Masks is the milestone change for how much stuff Dresden has to deal with in the world and how much he takes on, much like this and this. I consider them mini evolutions in the franchise. I keep calling it a franchise as if it has other stuff in mediums, but series. And did I put them in the right order? I did. Yeah, these are, and I mean, because I'm trying to like space them out based on how many books are in between. I think these are, there's more evolutions in the beginning, and I think that is understandable. This here is my favorite of the series. This era right here is like peak Dresden for me. But the individual books between here and here are, I think, are just stronger books. Skin Game is my favorite, but my favorite is not necessarily part of my favorite era, which is here to here. And that is my breakdown, very pedantic breakdown, but I like doing that, of the Dresden and the eras of Dresden and how the plot changes, evolves, and gets better or worse. I have heard a lot of different opinions on what people think is the best era of Dresden. A lot of people consider this is where the series actually gets good and is worth its salt in the grand fantasy series market that we are in right now with so many heavy hitters on the shelves. And I've heard people say that this is just classic Dresden. You can't get better than this, and it went downhill. Let me know in the comments what you think, and let me know what your favorite era is. But aside from that, happy reading, and I'll see you folks later.